Hi everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to actually take the deep dive. We're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to actually make that cover that I assume, have all been wanting to do. This is going to be pretty straightforward. We're not going to be doing any more searching. We're not going to be doing any setup and configuring of Krita. I did all that in the last video. I'm going to put a link to that down below if you want to go and take a look at it. If you're coming to this video new, and it shows you how to get the template and where to get artwork and fonts for your cover, as well as how to configure Krita so that when you get in there, your screen matches mine and it's easier to follow along, and also how to set up the guides and whatnot like that. So with that said, let's actually jump over to the desktop and take a look at what we've got here. I've got my template. I've already cleaned it up. I've taken all the extra writing out, and all I have is the placeholder for the barcode, the ISBN code, and I have my live areas, and I have added guides to my template so that I know where everything's at, and I'm set to bring in my artwork. Now, I did find about 5 or 6 pieces of artwork that I really liked for this book idea, but the one I finally settled on is this one right here, and it does everything that I want my book cover to do. It's got the genre, it expresses a definite tone. This is obviously an action adventure kind of story. There's something interesting happening on the cover that draws the eye. There's that human figure. There is a suggestion of story, and you have this astronaut. He's not in a pose. It's a dynamic. It's not static. It's a dynamic stance or pose that he's in. He's about to step off this asteroid and do a high altitude, low open jump, a halo jump from outer space. It's a really cool cover, and it actually fits my story that I'm going to be writing for this book very, very well. Okay, so now that we've got that, all we have to do is bring it in. Oh, by the way, it also has on the left-hand side here, it's got a nice neutral space for me to put my blurb and any other information, author information, whatever I want to put on the back. So it's got that nice neutral space. Now, when I first got it, it didn't. It was actually facing the opposite direction, and it looked like this, which means all my action would have been on the back cover instead of the front cover. You saw how easy it was to flip around. You just go up to image, and about halfway down, you'll see where it says mirror image horizontally. You just click on that, it'll flip it around, and you're done. It's that simple. So it doesn't matter if all your action is on the wrong side, because you can just put it on the right side. Pretty straightforward. All right, now what we're going to do next is we're going to just bring it over into this template here and drop it in there and see how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this tab. I'm going to go up to edit, and I'm going to go to copy, go back to my template, go up to edit, and hit paste. All right, so the first thing you're going to notice is my image is too small. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly okay. There's 2 ways you can fix this, the right way and the wrong way. So the wrong way is to come over here and grab your resizer tool, the transform tool. This is the one with the dot in the center and the square on the outside with the 6 little dots on each edge. Select that, hold your shift key down, come over here and grab a corner and just drag until it fits. All right, so it's done that. The problem with this though is you've resized it without redrawing it, which means if I zoom in here, everything's going to be fuzzy, it's going to be out of focus, it's no sharp clean edges, so that's not going to work for me. I want to have it be very sharp and very clean. So I've gotten this section right here so that we can kind of see the lines and everything like this. What we want to do instead of this is we want to go in and we want to see what the actual dimensions of the picture are. And it's actually really easy. You can go down and you can either go down here and it'll show you right here, it's 7850 by 5550, or you can just go up to image. So right down here, this shows you right here. Or you can go up to image and properties and it'll tell you the same thing right there, 7850 by 5550. So I know that the dimensions are 7,850 pixels wide by 5,550 pixels tall. So I'm gonna come back over here to my piece of art and I'm gonna go image, and I'm gonna drop down about halfway, a little more than halfway, and go scale image to my new size. And I'm gonna set my height right here to 5550. Now they're tied. When you see this little chain link right over here, if it's disconnected like that, it means that it will not resize it proportionally. So if I put in a different number here, it doesn't change that number up there on top. When the link is closed, that means that whatever change I make here, it'll keep the proportion. So if I make this 10,000, see how it keeps changes the number right above it? So that gives me the actual number. Never mind that it doesn't match the same number on the other image as far as width is concerned. That's fine. It just means it's going to stick over this side, left and right. But it's going to go from top to bottom just the way we want. I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK on that. It'll take a second for it to zoom in and redraw this. It's scaling the image. This may take longer on your computer than mine, and that's okay. I have a pretty fast computer, so I'm gonna zoom in here so you can kind of see the difference right here. So when you look at this compared to this, see how that's fuzzy? That's out of focus. You can see the difference right there. So you don't want to drag it to size. You want to actually rescale. That's what you want to do. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to actually get rid of this one because I don't want it. And you can actually get rid of a layer by right-clicking on it and go down and hit remove layer. And it's going to remove that layer from there. And I'm going to go down here. If you guys remember in the last video, I talked about how this little tool down here that shows you how far zoomed in you're in. I'm at 141%. If you hover over it and click this drop down, you can instantly resize and put everything back in the center. So I've got my template where I want it. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on my artwork. And I don't need to zoom out, but let's go ahead and just, again, for reminders, if you want to get it so it fills up the whole screen, come down here to where the zoom setting is and go up to fit page height. And it's right there in the center. Now I'm going to go edit. I'm going to go copy. And when I click on my template here and drop it in, you see it fits perfectly. If you want to see where your marks are, if you come over here and you click on the image where you've got the transform tool selected, you'll see where the boundaries are. So right now I'm exactly lined up perfectly on the left margin and the top margin with everything sticking over to the right. But if I come here, let's actually rename this real fast. This is my cover art. Rename by double clicking on it and then just call it whatever you want. So this is my cover art. I'm going to push it down below my template. And I'm going to set my template's opacity to about 60%. And the first thing you'll notice, I did this for a couple of reasons. It's kind of hard. The guides are really good for telling me where things are at and making sure I'm staying within my boundaries. But sometimes it's hard to get a sense of whether or not things are centered. So that's why I keep the template, even though I don't use it very much to line things up. When I turn the template on and have the opacity set around 60% or so, I can tell right now my astronaut is not centered on the cover. And I do want him centered in the cover. So I select the layer I want to work with, which is the cover art. Grab my move tool. I'm just going to drag my astronaut over until he's centered. And that looks about right. I think I'm good there. So I'm comfortable with that there. That looks pretty good. My astronaut is now centered. All right, so I've got that in there. Now it's time to start adding elements. And it's really very easy. Now, the first thing I do, just so you guys know, is I do color code my templates and my layers. So I am going to lock my layers too because I've got them where I want them. And how you lock your layer is you just come over here and you click on the lock here and here. And I didn't show you guys this in the last video, but over here, if you want to hide something, there's a little eye. And if the eye is visible, it means that layer is visible. You want to make it invisible, just click on the eye and it goes away. Okay, so let's go ahead and center this again because I want to have as much of the image to work with as I possibly can. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the title. Now, one of the things that somebody mentioned in one of the earlier videos is that I'd spelled survivor wrong on here. And I knew about that. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm not that clever, but I did catch it after the fact. And you want to make sure you get all your spelling correctly because there's not a spell check in the text tool here. So if you need to, spell everything out in Word first, and then you'll be good to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go up to the text tool real fast. And I'm going to just draw a text box. It doesn't matter how big you make it. I'm going to go ahead and just type in my title. So I can do this, and I can choose to have it centered. And that looks okay. And I can also choose the distance between the lines. I can do this right here. So this will adjust the distance between lines. I want this closer. So I can click on that and bring it up closer right here. Then I can hit save. And it will actually let's do this right here. Let's make this 72 so it's large. I'm going to hit save. What I do is I don't do the whole title this way. If you come over here and you look at the actual finished product, first of all, you see I have one S for both Soul and Survivor. What we have here is an ability to kind of make our cover unique and kind of give it a little bit of artistic flair by having the S stand for the first letter of both Soul and Survivor. So to do that, I need to actually create 3 layers here because this is a different size than this, and this is a different size than these two. So I actually am not going to just do 1 layer. I'm going to do 3 layers. So if I come back over here, instead of having this vector layer here, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'm going to actually create 3 layers. If you hit the plus sign down here, this will create you a new layer, but it's going to be a paint layer by default. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it begins with what's called a vector. And what a vector is instead of an actual image or text, it is a mathematical formula of angles and curves that is used to express what a letter looks like. And you can do that with anything really, but we're going to do it with letters here. And the advantage of that is you can, unlike with a picture where if you guys remember when I dragged it, I held down the shift key and I dragged and resized it. When I did that, it got fuzzy and out of focus. With a vector, because it's a mathematical equation, you can scale it infinitely. It's called infinitely scalable, which means I can make it as big as I want or as small as I want without losing any resolution or focus. And that's the advantage of working with vectors and fonts together, because I can shape and I can move, I can twist letters around, I can do things with them, and I won't distort or lose any resolution. The default setting is to create a paint layer when you hit plus, but you can hit the little down arrow just to the right of it, and it gives you multiple layer types that you can choose from. And we're going to pick add vector layer. You can also do this by hitting the shift and insert key. And so I'm going to create that vector layer right there, and I'm just going to call it S, because I'm going to make my S first. It just helps me find it because this is a letter. I'm also going to right click on it and I'm going to give it a specific color. This deals with my tiles. I'm going to give it that kind of yellowish tan color. And now I can find it a lot easier. If I'm looking at my layers, I can find the ones that relate to it. So my cover artwork is always going to be a nice, lovely green. So you can always find my artwork. Templates are going to be gray, and lettering is going to be that tan color. And that's what I do. But I'm gonna go ahead and turn this. And one thing real fast, just so you guys know, if you look at the little symbol to the right here, this means it's a paint layer. And this with the dots, it's kind of the same shape, but it has 3 dots on it in each corner, or 4 dots. That means it's a vector layer and it's infinitely scalable. And I'm gonna it doesn't matter where you put it. Because you can always move it. So I'm just gonna draw the S right here. And I'm just going to put in a single S. That's all I care about. That's all I need. Now I do need to do something here. I want to change my colors for that letter, and I need to change my font. Now, if you remember in the last video, I talked about this. I do have a template that keeps track of all my project elements and what they are. So for my first one, there's my cover art that I use right here. And then for the front title, this is the font I used. This is the effects I applied to that layer. And these are the colors I used. So 255, 177, and 0, or the hex code of FFB 100. So when I come in here and I want to change the color of this, now my color is going to be determined by this color wheel over here. So I'm going to discard this real fast. And I'm going to apply my settings here on this side. So if I remember correctly, it was, I don't remember correctly, but this is why it's important. Because I've already done this cover once. So FFB 100. And you can just copy and paste this if you wanted to. That's what I'm going to do. And this is the advantage of having this tool right here. And that's my orange. That's the orange that I want to use. So now when I come in here and I draw my text, now when I come in here and I draw my text, you see it's got the right color because it's pulling from this color palette over here. So now I'm going to just make my S. And I'm going to set my font according to what my guide says. And my guide says my font is Agency FB. I already have it there. And that's what I want right there. I'm going to make it bold. Now remember, if I don't have anything selected, it'll apply these changes to everything in there. If I want to only do it to a few letters, say I'm using a whole word or several words, I can pick specific letters or words that I want to apply it to. And the ones that are highlighted are the ones that it'll be applied to. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go up here and set this to 72, just so it's easier to see and grab and move. So 72, set to bold. I got the right font. I got the right color. Save. Now when I hit close, there's my S. It's right there. Isn't that a thing of beauty? All right. Now it's misleading because you think you can resize with these. You can't. You can move it around, but that's about all you can do. To resize or reshape something, you want to come over here to the transform tool, click on that, and you'll see right here that my letter is defined exactly by the borders here right now. And I can do one of two things. I can hold down the shift key and this will scale it up exactly the right size. That's fine. Now I know it looks like it's going out of focus, but that's only because it hasn't it knows I haven't finished doing what I'm going to do with it. As soon as I click off of that, you see how it got really sharpened up, right? So it just automatically cleans it up, makes it really sharp. The other thing that I can do with this tool is instead of you holding down the shift key, I can actually shape it however I want. You can see right there. So I can make it skinny. I can make it fat. I can do whatever I want. I can also do cool things like this. So if you hold it just to the side, you see the arrows pointing up and down. I can actually cause it to twist or cantilever. I can do that. I can do the same thing right here. If I do it on the bottom here, you see how it does it like that. And then if you get right here, so you have to move it around until you get it. You get the arrows to rotate, you can spin it around. So you can do all sorts of cool things with this letter. And because it is a vector, there's no distortion. There's no loss of resolution or quality. It just redraws it every time you do something, which is really pretty cool. And that's what makes working with letters as vectors so great. I can do all sorts of cool things to get the effect that I want. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back to what it was before. And let me zoom out here real fast. And I'm gonna and you can move things around with the transform tool as well, just so you know. I'm gonna put this right up here. I don't want it to go all the way to the top. Now I'm okay, because remember, this isn't my cut. This is not my trim line. This is my live area line. So I have a lot of room between where it's going to be trimmed and the actual letter, but this is my bleed area. I want this to be in the live area. So I'm just keeping it within that border right there. That looks pretty good. I think I'm going to make it a little bit fatter. So I'm not going to hold down the shift key. Because I hold down the shift key and I do that, see how it resizes it? I'm just going to grab the side without touching the shift key. I'm just going to stretch it out just a little bit. So it's right there. I can always play with it later. I think I like that. Okay. So now I've got my S. Looks pretty good. Go ahead and rename this. This just helps me know where it's at. And I'm going to color code it. So all my lettering gets that tan. You can use whatever color coding you want. So that's pretty straightforward. Not difficult to do at all. I like that a lot. Looks good. Now I'm going to do another vector layer, and I can come down here and click on that arrow, or I can just hit Shift Insert, and it will create a new one for me. So we hit Shift Insert. You see it's created a new vector layer right there. This is going to be Soul. So I'm just double click on that and spell O-U-L. You can see how it's easier to see what's what. You have actual names for everything. You know where everything's at. It's a little too close. Let me grab the move tool, make sure I've got my S selected. See how easy it is because I have the name of the layer. Now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to my vector layer. I'm going to go up to the text tool, and it doesn't matter where you draw it. I can draw it anywhere. I can draw it over here. I can make it really tiny, whatever I want to do, because I can just always move it around. The thing to bear in mind is that this now is still holding on to the old color. So I need to fix that real fast. Remember, I'm not highlighting anything, so everything I do in here is going to apply to it in its entirety. I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to make it 72, just so it's easy to see. And I'm going to, from the drop down, I'm going to pick my typeface, make sure it's bold, hit save, and close. Now I have that right up here, and I can put it where I want it to go. I'm going to have it kind of line up there at the top. But I'm going to need to resize it. So one of the things you can use your guides for, because you can add additional guides. If you want to move the image around, you can come down to this hand right down here and click on that. And that gives you the ability to just drag the whole thing you're working on, or you can just hold down your shift key and not your shift key, I'm sorry, your space key. And you can just drag it with your mouse that way. Okay. So kind of zoomed in, I can see pretty clearly where my guides are, and I want to actually make this go the whole length or pretty much across all the way. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my transform tool, and I'm going to bring it over all the way over here. Now, it doesn't really stand out against the background very well, but don't worry about that because we're going to do some things that will help it stand out a lot. I'm going to bring this down a little bit more to about there because my Survivor is going to be smaller lettering. So I have this. It looks like I got about the same distance between the left and the right of the cover. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to go ahead and add Survivor, and I'm going to do that by hitting Shift Insert. And that's going to give me another vector here. I'm just going to call this Survivor Front. All right. And I'm going to color code these real fast so they're easy to find. Now, the first thing you'll notice right here, my colors have changed back. So when I go in to make the text here, it'll go back to this ugly brown that I don't want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that color back in there for my nice orange. So my colors are consistent every single time. Do you see why it's so important to have this stuff actually recorded on a spreadsheet, write down on a piece of paper, whatever you have to do, make a record of it somewhere so you can have consistency throughout and not have to try to guess which color or try to remember which color swaths you clicked on up here in this area right here. It just makes it easier to write those things down. If you have to stop, if your computer crashes, in the last video, you'll remember we were working and Krita crashed and all the work would be lost. And then you have to do it from scratch again. Having that information written down somewhere is really, really nice. Okay. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just draw my text box right there. And I'm going to do all caps. And I'm actually going to spell the whole word out here. Just to make sure it's spelled right, Survivor. Then we'll go to home, delete the S. Like I said, you really want to be careful with your covers. Have somebody else check it out for you because you do not want to have a misspelled word on your cover, print up 500 copies for a convention or whatever, get there and then realize that you've just spent thousands of dollars printing defective covers. That might someday be worth something if you hit like J.K. Rowling status, which I'd be happy with just half her success. I'm not greedy, but that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to make this bold as well. I'm going to hit save and close. Now I've got my Survivor right here. It looks pretty good. I'm going to come over here to my resize tool because I am going to want to bring it in here and make it kind of line up right there. That looks pretty good, but I want it to go all the way to the same space or the same ending as. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see how it looks. All right, so there it is, and it looks pretty good. But the first thing you're going to notice is that it's hard to read the title, which we don't want to have for a book cover, obviously. So we're going to do some stuff to make that title stand out a little bit more. This is just laying down the color. Don't worry if it doesn't stand out. You can always make it stand out by doing different things to it. One of the things I did do is I picked this orange because it's very similar to the orange in the back. It's a lighter orange, but it is not the primary color. We don't do a dark blue or a white because it's not going to stand out very well, but it also complements that orange. So it's, if you can find a secondary color that's not dominant in your cover and make it the color of your text, that's always going to make it look more appealing. Now, once we get this kind of where we like it, it looks pretty good. I'm very happy with that being where it's at. I might bring it down a little bit more. Let me zoom in here a little bit, and I want to make the title just a little bit bigger. So let me come over here. I'm going to click on my S. See how nice it is? I can just find it because I've labeled it. I'm going to bring this down here, right there. I'm going to go to Survivor, and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to bring it down here. Let's do it right there. I want to have just some nice spacing between my letters. That's why I'm doing this. And you can move these things around all day long to get them where you want them to be. Now, if you want to have everything look really nice, you can come down here and make sure your letters line up. Come down and make sure your guides are selected. Unlock your guides. Drag a guide down to the bottom right here. And you can see my S doesn't line up perfectly. So I'm going to make sure my S is selected. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to drag that up. You see what happened when I did that? I'm trying to grab my S and it grabs the guide. This is why you want to lock your guides. Once you've locked your guides, now I can grab that S just fine and I can move it forward. So once you've moved your guides where you want them, make sure you lock them. I'm going to see if this matches up on top as well. And it does. All right, cool. So my letters match up really nice. And that's one of the things you can use guides for, is to make sure everything lines up perfectly. If I'm just using the template, I don't have that ability. Those guides are really a lifesaver. So we lock them again here real fast. What I want to do is I want to give my letters some personality, something that you can't do in Canva. I have this kind of fiery background going on, so I want to make my letters look like they're on fire or they're super heated as well. And I'm going to do that by putting the cooler edge on the top and the bottom of my letters and having this nice orange stay in the center. And to apply a gradient, you have to change a vector away from being a vector and turn it into an image. So you have to make sure you're all done with everything here and you're satisfied with where everything looks like right here. And I am, but you can always undo it, but you might want to save it to the very end and make these final changes at the very end, so you don't have as many undos to do. I would probably not apply the finishing touches till the very end. So I'm going to hold off on that. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Now that I've got my title up here and I really like where it's at, I'm going to create another vector layer. And this one's going to be my author name. I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to drag that right there. And this one's pretty simple. I'm going to just make this white, but I'm going to use the same font. And I'll bold it. So I'm going to pick the Agency FB typeface, but I've lost my bold font. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to bold. And I'm going to sit this down here all the way to 72 and hit save and then hit close. So I've got my name down here. It looks pretty good. I want it to be a little bit wider. So I'm just going to pick my transform tool, come down here, and I'm going to stretch it out that way and this way. My name's a little bit bigger. Maybe bring it out a little bit more here. Just kind of play with it so you get a good feel for it and you like it. I'm trying to make sure that it's an equidistance between the guides, and I don't want it covering my astronaut's foot, so I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. This is not my trim line. Remember, these are my live areas, so as long as I'm in there, I'm okay. My trim line's all the way down here. So there's a good space between my name and my trim line, and so I have plenty of room to work with this. So I'm going to click on that again, and I'm just going to bring it down just a smidge more. I just like having the astronaut's foot clear. I'm going to use my keypad to just nudge it a little bit until I'm happy. All right, that looks pretty good. And that actually doesn't need a lot of work. It's already popping off the darker background, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my title on the back, on the spine. So we'll just go ahead and do that real fast. We're going to go ahead and create another vector image. Hit Shift Insert, and this is going to be. Now I do a different one for my author's name because there's two of those. I want to be able to find them. So I'm going to change the color for this, and I'm going to use blue for the author name. And this is going to be the title. So I'm doing my title with all of the same colors. So my title up here, this is going to be my title spine. You don't have to do this. It just makes it easier for me to find it. And since it's a title, it's going to get that beige kind of color. And I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to do the same thing I did before. But before I do that, I want this to be the same color. And you'll notice right here, my colors have reverted back to this ugly brown. I happen to know for a fact that this is the color that I selected. So see the FB100. So I can just click on the swath there. So that makes things easier. But if it had been a non-specific color, like something out of here, like, I don't know, something like that, and that's not going to be in my palette over here, I'm not going to be able to find it very easy, but I can click on that and get that back there. So that's already picked. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to draw my text right here and just type in Soul Survivor. And this doesn't matter what order you do it in. This time I'm going to pick the font first, but it doesn't really matter what order. Turn my caps lock on. Soul Survivor. Make sure I spell it right. Survivor. I did spell it right. We'll make it bold and we'll do 72. Just to make it easier to find. Go ahead and hit save. Go ahead and hit close. Now, of course, this isn't going to fit on my spine the way it is because it's horizontal, not vertical. And that's actually super easy to fix. I can just right click on that and I can go down to transform, rotate 90 degrees. And now all of a sudden it's ready for my spine, but there is a small problem. If we zoom in, you'll see it's not going to fit on my spine. That's not a problem. I can always transform it. So I'm going to get it lined up here so it's in the center. And my center lines right here, if you notice right here, I'm right up against the edge. In fact, if I turn my template on, you see I'm going over into the bleed area here on the bottom, and I'm right up against the fold. I'm right against the bleed area there. So my bleed area lines are pretty good. I definitely need to reshape this or resize it. So I'm gonna go down here to my transform tool, click on that. And we'll just kind of bring it in here a little bit there, and we'll bring it in a little bit here. And let's zoom out a little bit. And I'm gonna make it a little bit longer here. Drag it down here a little bit. And maybe we'll just bring it up here just so it's right there. And zoom in, make sure we're good. I'm gonna use my cursor keys to get it kind of centered a little bit more. And I feel pretty good about that. I think I'm in the center. So as you guys can see, I use the guides and I use the template both. I find the template gives me a much better visual impression of where things are, and the guides just help me place them without losing, without having that interference there. So now I've got my title for the spine, and to be honest with you, it's not necessary to go all the way up to the top. You certainly can if you want to. And now I'm going to do the same thing over here for my author's name. I'm going to put it down here. I'm just going to do my last name. Close. I'm going to zoom in so I can see it. Hold down the space key and drag it so it's kind of easier to work with. I know where my live areas are, so I'm going to move this in between them. There's my center mark right here because it's right in the center. You guys can see that right there. And that's what's nice about this. This is my center mark. And I'm going to pick my transform tool and I'm just going to resize it. So make it big enough that it can be seen easily. Using my cursor keys to move it so it's centered again. There we go. Now I've got my title on my front cover. I've got my title on my spine. I've got my author's name there. I've got my author's name there. Now we're going to do our back cover and our blurb. This is actually pretty easy to do. The first thing I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to, once again, create a vector layer. This is going to be my blurb. I know the blurb is on the back, so I don't need to spell, blurb back, but I'm going to do it anyway, just to remain consistent. You can do whatever you want. And my blurb is text, but it's not a title, so I'm going to make it green. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't make a difference. My cover art is green as well, so I can change that to a different color if I want. Let's make it purple. Whatever you want to do. It doesn't make a difference. You don't get to choose the colors that you've got available to you, but you can see you have a whole lot of colors that are available. And you see already why it's so important to track them. Right now, I'm not done yet. I already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers. So labeling them and color coding them really helps you keep that straight. So for my blurb, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to grab that text tool. I'm going to drag it in here and I'm just going to put, oops, grab the wrong one. Drag my box right there. And I'm going to make my text white. And I'm going to go with a different font for this. I'm going to go with Arial. Maybe I'll do the sans serif. That's fine. And I'm going to put my blurb in here. My blurb is pretty straightforward, guys. I've already got it written. I don't recommend writing it in here. There is no spell checker, so it's going to be rife with spelling errors and typos. Write it in Word first or Google Docs or something with a spell check, and then you can copy and paste it in here. So I've gone in and I pasted it in here. So I already got it right there. And I'm going to hit close. And it does fit the dimensions of my box, which is not a problem. That looks pretty good. Let's make sure I'm not going to have a problem with my, it's a little tight right there. So what I can do, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to bring it down to 100 for everything in there because that's a big gap for everything. Select everything and we're just going to bring it down. See what that looks like. Not too bad. I like that. We're going to put some spaces between some things. So we're going to go right here. Put a space there. Down here. Put a space there. Hit close. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit lower over here. Remember to always save your work. Let's go ahead and hit page height, and that looks pretty good. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more. Now, one of the things you're going to notice, again, the text does kind of blend in. We're going to fix this. That's fine. We're just getting everything positioned right now. Don't worry that things are blending in with the background and that they're hard to read. We're positioning things where we want them to be. All right, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable with where I've got everything now. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave the back title till later, and I'll show you why. Instead of creating it twice, once we get the front title and we're done with it, we'll just copy it and make a smaller version on the back. So I have space on my barcode. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Everything looks really, really good. I'm going to hide my guides just to see what it looks like without everything on there. Looks pretty good. Like I said, it is kind of hard to read the text here, especially with the clouds. Up here it's fine, down here it's fine, but in this area it's hard to read. So we're going to want to do something to make that text more easily legible. But for right now, we're pretty much done with our cover. Everything's on there that we need. Just how fast that went. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually add some elements to, not add some elements. These are all of our elements right here. We're going to add some characteristics to our elements to make them stand out a little bit more. My name and on the spine and on the front look pretty good, so I'm not worried about that, but I want to bring that Soul Survivor title out a little bit more. I want to give it kind of a burnt look. So there's a couple things that we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually take our letters right here and we're going to change them from being vectors into paint layers. So I'm going to right click on that and go down here to convert, and I'm going to convert it to a paint layer. The reason why I'm doing this is I cannot apply the effects that I want to these elements as long as they're vectors, because when they're vectors, they're not images. They're mathematical representations of those letters. So now that I've got that done, I come over here to my selector, this paintbrush right here, this contiguous. And what that does is when I click on something, it draws an outline of it in its entirety. Now that I've done that, I'm going to come over here to my gradient tool on the left-hand side, click on that. I'm going to make sure I have a gradient going from dark to light. So my two colors that I've chosen are my background color, and then I've made this really dark orange as my foreground color. So when I come in here and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm about to do. I'm going to take this gradient tool and I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to go straight down to about right there. And you see right there, it kind of gives it that burnt look on top. I'm going to bring it down a little bit further. So I hit Control Z to undo. I'm going to bring it down so it comes down a little bit further. I'm going to do about there. So one of the things you want to do when you're applying a gradient across different size letters is you want to know where your stop line is. How do we do that? It's pretty easy. We just go down to our guides. Let's show our guides. Let's unlock it. Let's grab a new guide and we're going to put it down to about right here. This is kind of where we stopped with that. And that's where we want to be. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more. I'm going to lock my guide. And now I know where my gradient is going to be. And it's going to be critical when I apply it to these other letters. Now I'm going to do my gradient. I'm just going to grab here at the very top. I'm going to drag it down so I hit that stop mark there. Make sure the line is straight. If I do it at an angle, see how it kind of does it like that? So you can play with angles if you want, but I don't want to do that. I want to go straight from the top to the bottom. So I want to make sure that line's as straight as I can possibly make it. Right to there. And now I've given it that kind of cool effect right there. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom. So I'm going to create another guide right here, about the same distance on the bottom. Lock my guides. And do the exact same thing. I'm going to come from the bottom. This time go up toward that mark and do it like that. Now, if I did the same way I did on the top, you'd see what it does right here. If I do it from top to bottom, see how it does the whole letter. So I'm wanting to do just from the top to I want to do from the bottom to my mark here. So I'm going from the bottom toward that mark instead of from the top of the mark down to the bottom of the letter. And that gives me that kind of burnt look on the top and burnt look on the bottom, and gives my yellow, my middle is that consistent orange. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck my selection. So go up to select and deselect. So that's no longer selected. I'm going to go to Soul. I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to convert it to a paint layer, and I'm going to do the same thing with Survivor. So now these things are paint layers as well, and that's very useful for me because I can apply that same effect. Now I'm going to go ahead and hold down my space key, and I'm going to drag the whole title over here so I can see it. And I'm going to go down and grab my selection tool, make sure I'm on Soul. And when I click on it, if I don't hold down a key, I can just pick one letter at a time. But if I hold down the Shift key, I can pick multiple letters. And the advantage of that is I don't have to do each letter individually when I apply that gradient. I'm going to come over here to my gradient tool, and I'm just going to grab, it doesn't matter whether I do the O, the U, or the L. I'm just going to grab the L because it's a nice straight clean letter. I'm going to just drag a straight line down here. That's where I lost my burn mark. I forgot that I'm doing the whole letter. So since the whole letter is selected, when I did the bottom, it did the gradient from the bottom to the top there, and it changed it. So I'll show you guys how to get it. So it's got two gradient colors. It's actually really easy. It's copy and paste. It's super easy to do. All right. So now that I've got that done, let's go ahead and do Survivor real fast. Straight up, straight down, nice straight line. Boom. Now I have that burn look right there. Let me do one thing here real fast first to show you. We're going to get the S burned on top and on the bottom. So with the S, I'm just going to click on this, make sure it's selected. I'm going to go edit. I'm going to do copy. So I've made a copy of that layer right there. And now I'm going to do edit, and I'm going to do paste. And it doesn't look like anything has changed, but if you look over here, and I have two. I have a top one and a bottom one. And that's perfect because this is my front title right here, and there's my bottom. So if I hide that one, nothing really changes, but I'm going to show you something really cool here. I'm going to now do this letter again. Let's go ahead and pick the S here. It's selected. Now, when I do my gradient tool from here to here, all right. So notice here though, when I did that, I've got a real big line there, which I don't want. So I'm going to come up here to my top S. See, if I hide it, it's not there, but I want those things. So all I'm going to do with that top S is I'm going to do some erasing. So I'm going to go over here to my eraser, and I'm going to make sure my eraser is selected from my brushes. We'll call them all the way up here, grab my eraser. I'm going to use my airbrush eraser. I prefer the airbrush eraser because it gives a softer edge. And I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Make sure I have the right layer selected. I've got the top S, and I do. Make the size a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to go like that. Boom, right there. I'm going to erase that line. And now I have a nice blending of the darker orange at the bottom and the top. I'm going to go all the way down to my line because that's where I ended it right there. Pretty straightforward. And now to make this one, I'm just going to right click on this, and I'm going to say merge to the layer below. Now you have to make sure I've got the right S's. So I've got the S and the S. I'm just going to merge them into one layer. So right click, merge with layer below. Now I just have the one S again. That's all I have is the one S, and it's got the darker orange on the top and the bottom. Very easy to do. So I can apply the effect the way that I want it to. Now let's go ahead and add some additional features. So with the layer, we'll go down here to layer styles, and we're going to add that stroke like we had before. So let's put the stroke on here, put a checkbox next to it. In order to see the effect that you want to look at and see the settings for it, you do have to have it highlighted. So if I'm not on there, I can see it's applied, but I can't adjust the settings. I have to make sure I've selected that. Just putting a check in it doesn't do what I want it to do. So I hit the check, it'll give me the drop shadow, but I'm not going to be able to edit it until I actually click on it, if that makes sense. All right, so let's go down here to the stroke. And it's really thick, so I'm going to make it really small. I'm going to do about 12 maybe. Make it a little bit smaller, maybe a 10. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go down, and we can always change it. So I think that looks good. Now I'm going to do something cool. I'm going to do the bevel and the emboss, and I'm going to put a check on that. And this looks really cool. You can see what that does right there. My burnt is still there. My orange is lightened a little bit, which is fine. This is a very subtle gradation, but now it really stands off the back. I'm going to make that stroke a little bit thinner because I don't need it to be that. So let's bring it down a little bit more. Bring it down to 8. Bring it down to 5, maybe 5 looks good. I think 5 looks good. It's very faint. I don't really need a lot of it there. And then I'm going to do the drop shadow. And I'm going to make my drop shadow very subtle. I don't want a huge drop shadow. Pretty subtle. I think that looks good. I'm at a 21 distance. That looks really good. Now I'm going to do the same thing with Soul and Survivor as well. So let's click on Soul right here. I'm going to go into my layer, go to my layer style, move this out of the way so I can see what my effects are that I'm doing. I'm going to do the stroke, and we're going to set that down to 5 as well. These are comparably sized letters, so I think that works really well. We're going to apply the inner bevel right here, turn that on. And the inner bevel works just fine for this. These letters, like I said, they're about the same size. I'm going to apply the drop shadow, and it's got the same level of subtlety that I want right there. I'm going to hit OK. And now I'm going to do the same thing with Survivor. Now, Survivor's got smaller letters, so I'm going to play a little bit different size variance with that. But let's go ahead and go into Layer, go down to Layer Style. I'm going to apply a stroke. Way too big. I'm going to bring my stroke down to probably about a 5 or a 4. Let's do a 5. Smaller letters, but I don't think the 5. That looks good. I think I'm good with that. I'm going to do my bevel and my emboss. But this is going to see how much bigger it is. I don't like it that big. These are smaller letters. So I'm going to take the size of the bevel down to about 15, I think. So proportionally, it should be about the same percentage. You can kind of see right there. It's the same. 15 looks good. I feel comfortable with that. Now we'll do the drop shadow. And because they're the same distance, the drop shadow should be the same. I'm not going to change that. And that's just going to keep it consistent. And we'll go ahead and hit OK. And let's take a look and see what our cover looks like so far. Fit page height. That looks really good. I like it so far. I'm going to hide my guides. It's looking pretty good. It stands out from the background. Looks beautiful. I have that subtle gradation that kind of makes the edges look like they've been burned a little bit. So there's some heat on them. Very subtle, but it looks really good. Subtle is not a bad thing. You don't want something really garish. So I always go for subtle. And the subconscious picks it up. They may not notice it, but it just gives it that extra polished look. Let's go over here. I'm going to have to convert this also to a paint layer. And with this, I'm going to do the gradient only one direction because the letters are smaller. I'm not even going to apply the gradient, I think. I'm just going to apply the bevel and the border because the gradient is real subtle and we'll see what it looks like. We can play with it. We're going to turn it off so it's not that big a deal if we don't. Let's go ahead and put that right there. And again, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can get all the letters here. Okay, I'm going to come down here to my gradient tool. And I'm going to go from left to right this time, from the top. Well, it would be the top of the letter, but it's left to right. And just see what that looks like. Oh, whoa, had the wrong gradient selected. Had the eraser. Remember, I erased that letter. So I just have to go in here and change my setting to the airbrush. And now when I do that, it'll work. I don't think it's going to look too bad. I think I can leave that in there. It's subtle enough that I'm not that worried about it. I'm actually going to make it go down to about the halfway point, I think. And I'm not sure if I'm getting it straight, so I'm going to zoom in because you want to be careful because if I do an angle like this, it's going to do that sort of thing right here. So I'm going to zoom in and make sure I've got a straight line. Let's do the halfway point. There you go. I feel pretty good about that. I think that's going to look good. It's very subtle. I think it'll work though. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect all of those. And now I'm going to play with that layer. Do the same thing. Again, these are smaller letters, so my stroke is going to be very small compared to the others. If I have a really big stroke, it's just not going to look good. See right here is way too big. So I'm going to bring this down to probably about 5 like I have with the other letters. So I think 5 is fine. Barely noticeable. Great. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a bevel. I don't know if I'm going to do a drop shadow or not. These are much smaller letters, so my bevel needs to be a lot smaller too. So I'm going to bring it down to about 12 maybe, 12 or 10. That looks a little bit better, and I think it will benefit from a drop shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and do a drop shadow. My drop shadow is going to change. So if you notice right here, if I zoom in, the drop shadow doesn't match. So my drop shadow over here is to the right and below the letters, and it's to the right and below here, but I want it to be the right and below. So it's going to be at this angle instead of this angle over here. So that's not a problem. I'm just going to go ahead and go to my layer real fast, and I can change the angle of the drop shadow by clicking on that right here. And you can see this is my angle right here. It shows me where the light's coming from. So if I move the light over to here, it should shift the drop shadow right over there to the right and down below. And that's exactly what it did. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to bring the distance down a little bit because it is kind of high. I don't need it to be showing that much of a drop shadow. So let's bring it down to 15 maybe. Remember, less is more. Make it real subtle. I'm just trying to get it to stand out from the background, and it does. So I'm pretty happy with what I've got so far. This looks really, really good. Fit page height. Now there's a couple things that we are going to fix on here real fast, but I'm going to put my back title on there, and the back title is super easy. I'm happy with my title. I think it looks really good. So all I'm going to do right here is I'm just going to merge them down. So I'm going to merge with the layer below. And I'm going to do the same thing with this. So I just have the one. Remember, I told you once we got happy with the title on the front, we were going to just kind of copy it and put it on the back. And that's what we're going to do right here. So I've got my title right there. Make this a nice tan color. And now I've got that. And I'm going to actually rename this just front title. Right? Pretty straightforward, right? And I'm just going to copy that layer now. I'm just going to edit. I'm going to go copy. Turn my guides on so I know where everything's at. Now I'm going to edit and paste. You're not going to see any change here because it just pastes it right on top of itself. But as soon as I grab my transform tool, come over here and click on that, I can move it over to the back, and I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to hold my shift key down so it doesn't warp or anything. I'm just going to make it kind of small. I'm going to move it over here so that it's inside my boundaries. That looks pretty good. I'm going to go to my blurb, which was purple, if you guys remember that. I've got my move tool selected, so I'm just going to click on that. And I'm just going to use my move tool to move this up a little bit. Right there, just so it looks nice and clean. And I've got myself a decent looking cover now. It looks pretty good, but there are some problems. So first of all, while my text here in front of the sun is very easy to read, my text on the back is easy to read. My name stands out nice, and I don't need to do anything with that. You can if you want, but it's not necessary. Let me hide the guides here real fast. This is really hard to read, especially in a certain area. There's a couple ways we can fix that. And we also have some things that are kind of wrong on the front of the cover. So first of all, I'm going to make this text on the back easier to read. And it's a layer like anything else. So I can actually just go up to layer right here, and I can actually just go down the layer style, and I can give it a drop shadow. I can give it a stroke. Now, adding a stroke to really fine lettering doesn't look very good, even if I go small. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there. I can read that now. It's pretty easy to read. I'm going to bring it down to about 12. I can read it. That's one way to do it. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Bring it down to 5, see if that makes a difference. Not quite enough to be able to read, so you can definitely do that. This is one way you can make that work. So I can definitely do the stroke. That works. The other thing that I can do is I can add a drop shadow to the text. And this looks a lot cleaner, and I can read that now, and that's another way to do it. The other thing that I can do is I can play with gradients. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that drop shadow off. and hit OK. And by coming down here and adding another layer above or right below, I'm gonna put it above my template, but right below my text. So I'm gonna click on my template right here and hit plus, and it's gonna add a layer right above it. I'm just gonna call it gradient back. And this is another trick that you can do is now that I've got this, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab my select tool and I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to drag and select everything from the very left of the book all the way to about that bleed line right there. And then I'm going to come up here to my gradient tool and I have some options up here. When I click on this right here, this shows me the gradient I'm currently using, which is this dark orange to lighter orange. And when I click on that, I actually have some that I can pick. And I can do this one right here, which is foreground to transparent. And I'm going to pick that one. It's a preset gradient. And I'm just going to go from here all the way straight line over. I'm going to do a straight line so you don't have those angles to there. Forgot to change my colors. Not a problem, guys. I'm going to go ahead and undo my cover. Let me do my cover real fast. Do that black. So I undid it, and now I'm going to do it again, all the way over here, all the way to that. And you see it adds a gradient to there. So I go here. Now my opacity changes right here. So I'm going to change my opacity all the way to 100. And instead of going from the very edge, I'm going to go from that right there, from that corner, do a straight line. You can see it right here. Now, all of a sudden, that goes from black and it kind of fades it out a little bit. I could do this. I could change the opacity of the gradient level if I want to, which makes it a little bit easier to adjust. Or I can, like I said, you can change the opacity up here. Let's undo that and set it lower, and you won't have as powerful an effect, but you're still going to get that. And that's another way to make the letters more legible. It also kind of makes the cover darker, makes it a little bit more appealing. You can leave it there if you want. I'm going to add the drop shadow as well because I like this look. I think it looks cool. It makes the back a little bit more dramatic. Makes him feel like he's in space. So I'm going to go down here to my layer style and I'm going to turn my drop shadow on. Make the distance a little lower. And I'm going to make the opacity a little higher. Let's take it up to 85. Just play around with it a little bit till you get what you like. Now I have this cool, very dramatic effect here with the cover getting from lighter to darker, from darker to lighter as it moves towards the center. And my text is all very legible. So these are some tricks that you can use to make text legible, white text legible against a a lighter background. So I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna hit select and deselect. So far I have a really good looking cover, but there's a couple of things that I would like to change. Let's go ahead and jump in here and fit height. So one of the things is my astronaut is behind the text. And if you look over here on the cover that I designed, yep, so this is the one that I designed, and I can bring him to the front. And I've got him brought to the front like this. So they're very similar covers. You can see they're almost identical. Slightly different because I use the same elements, but I did them position a little bit differently. But my astronaut's in the front of the letters and he pops a little bit more. So how do you do that? That's actually very easy to do. You just come down here to this bottom right here, and you're going to actually copy the helmet. Now, the best way to copy the helmet is not to use the freeform tool, but the polygonal tool. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to actually hide my title on the front so it's invisible. And I'm going to zoom in, make sure I've got my cover art one selected. I'm going to go grab my polygon tool, which is this one right here. And I'm going to just trace my astronaut. And you do it by clicking once, drawing a line, and you can draw as many as you want to. You can get really good curves, right? Now, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to get his whole helmet. So I'm just going to go from the back straight across here. I don't really care. I just know I'm going to get enough of it right there. And then I'm just going to kind of go like this. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So now I've got that, and I'm just going to hit copy, edit, copy, and then I'm going to hit deselect. Go up to select and choose deselect. We don't need that anymore. And I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to hit paste. Now, down here on my layers, what you're going to notice is I have two cover arts. Now, if I come over here, it says cover art and cover art. This is actually my helmet, so I'm just going to rename it helmet. Boom. And when I zoom out now, and I make my title on the front visible again, all I'm going to do is I'm going to move that helmet. I have to unlock it because it's copied from a locked layer. It's locked too, which means I can't move it. So I have to unlock it, but I'm just going to move it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. I'm above my title front now, and you can see he's now in front of the letters. You can still see the letters. You can still read the word survivor. And I'm going to go ahead and lock that element as well. And when I zoom out, I have this really good looking cover. Everything looks fantastic. There's one other problem that we're going to address, and this is probably going to be the hardest thing that you have to do. So down here in the lower right-hand corner, we have this right here. This is called a tangent. A tangent is where it looks like two things are touching, and that's fine if they are touching. You can use it to good effect to draw attention to something. But in this case, it draws the eye and it takes away from the rest of the cover. We actually want to go in and get rid of that. And I'm going to show you over here on this one. So I actually got rid of the tangent over here. And when I get rid of that tangent, you can see what it looks like when I get rid of it. So now that I've gotten rid of it, when I get rid of that tangent, you can just see what it looks like when it's there, when it's not. So it looks a lot cleaner when it's not there. These are small things, and they're actually very, very easy to do. But getting rid of something like a tangent is probably the most difficult thing I'm going to show you how to do in this video. But you can see the difference between the two when you have the helmet in front and that little element in the back that looks like it's touching his hand. When it's gone, it's a huge difference between this and this. So this is the cover when we don't have the astronaut in front and the tangent gone. Big difference. Small, subtle little changes that make a big difference. Let me show you how to do that. It's actually very easy. I'm going to go ahead and close this. No, I don't need to save that. And now we're going to actually get rid of that tangent. So we're zoomed in already, and it's very easy to get rid of. First thing we have to do is we have to unlock our cover art. And what I'd recommend doing, instead of working with the cover art itself, because if you make a mistake, it's a big pain, we're going to actually copy this into a new image. Now I've already done that. I have my image right here. So I'm just going to come in here real fast and you just copy it and you just hit edit new image. So basically what you do over here, you just go edit, do copy, and then you're going to do edit and you'll just paste into a new image. That's all you have to do. And then you'll end up with this right over here. And we're going to use a tool called the clone tool. This is actually very easy to do. So I'm going to go over here, make sure my brush is selected, make sure my element is unlocked. And I'm going to go to my brush presets and I'm going to scroll down until I find my clone tool. These are not alphabetical, guys. But right here's my clone tool. It looks like this little Z-shaped ruler. I'm going to click on that. So you're going to set you can set your opacity up to 100 if you want to. And if I do that, so if I do my color picker right here, let's do orange. I do orange right here. You see right here how it does that, but it's not just doing the color, it's reproducing the astronaut's suit. So it's doing the whole 9 yards here, and that's great. We want to do that. This is why it's called the clone brush, because it's going to make a copy over there. Now I'm going to go ahead and undo that. What we're going to do is we're going to actually zoom in, and we're going to actually pick the color here. Now this is kind of tricky because see, it goes from darker gray to lighter gray. So how we pick our color and where we do our work is very important. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to pick this color right here. Let's go right. We'll do this color right here. We'll pick that one right there. And then I'll just move a brush down so it's at the same angle. I'm not going to move it straight down because if I do it straight down, this gradient isn't the same as this one. I'm going to move it at an angle right here. And if I do this, then I can start kind of getting rid of the object and the gradient is going to stay pretty much the same. Can I see how that's working right there? I'm going to do the same thing down here on the bottom. It's not that difficult, but you're going to notice it looks kind of smeared. That's fine. We're going to clean it up here in just a little bit. I'm just doing the heavy lifting right now so I can get rid of that element right there. It looks kind of smushy and smeared. It doesn't look really good. So what we're going to do now that we've gotten rid of it and we're happy with that, we're going to come up here and we're going to set our opacity at about 45%. Do the same thing we did before. We're going to pick a color of the gradient that we want. And we're going to come down here because it's at 45%. We're actually blending now. We're just kind of blending that in there so we don't have that smear. Every time you let up on your mouse, it does a rebuild on that. Do the same thing down here. And it's only doing it at 45%. So you can kind of blend it a little bit. You can see how it's kind of going away. This is probably the most, whoops, I didn't do that, right? This is probably the most difficult thing, and mostly because it's just time consuming. But we can get rid of all of this right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to do this real fast. And you can change the size of your brush. As we're getting closer to the astronaut, we're going to need a smaller brush to do what we want to do. We can zoom in. We're just going to blend. And that's all you're doing is you're just blending. This will take time, but when you get done, you can get rid of that smear altogether so that you end up looking like I have with mine. And once we've got rid of all that smearing, now when you zoom out, it's still there a little bit, but you're not going to really notice it. You can spend more time until you get it exactly right. And once you've done that, you're going to actually come in here and you're going to, and I can move it in. My astronaut's in the front. My tangent on the side is now gone. I have a cover. Real fast, I'm going to look at the template, make sure I don't have anything out of line with my guides. I don't. This is a little snug. I might move that to the right a little bit. My barcode's going to be fine. That looks good. Everything's in there. Everything looks really good. Now, at this point, I have my finished cover, but I can't use it as a cover yet because it's not a PDF, and Krita doesn't have the ability to turn things into a PDF. So I'm going to go up here. I'm just going to actually go to edit, and I do copy. We need to select everything. Sorry. We're going to go in here. We're going to actually go to select. We're going to hit select all. Now we're going to go up to edit, and we're going to choose copy merged. Then we're going to go in here and we're going to go to edit, and we're going to paste it into a new image. We're going to keep it as the web because these numbers are the values we want. If we do this monitor, it's going to look a little bit different. So do that real fast. And now we have one layer. That's it. Everything's there. Everything's in place. We're going to go ahead and save it as file and save as, and we'll call it Soul Survivor. We're going to save it in my desktop, in my YouTube folder here. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. So go down here, choose your, right now I'll save it as a Krita file. When I save it as a JPEG, just come down here, select that as the style. And we're going to go ahead and save it as a Soul Survivor JPEG. So we'll just do this and we'll do 1228. 24 Soul Survivor. We'll do 100% quality. And we're done. We're done in here. We're finished. You might want to save this in case you ever want to work on it again. So you can just save it as long as you save it as a KRA, all these layers will remain intact. So you can save that if you want. I'm going to go ahead and hit save real fast. Takes just a second. And when it's done, this bar down here will be finished. Now what we're going to do is we're going to launch Scribus because we're going to need to create a PDF file. There it is. Now I already have opened this recent document. I already have the PDF file. You guys will need to go ahead and browse and open it. So I'm actually going to do that though. We're just going to browse to an existing document. So what you do from this new document page, just go open an existing document and you're going to browse to wherever you downloaded it to. So on mine, it's going to be in the desktop folder here. It'll open this up right here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. What you're going to do is up here in the menu bar, there's this little guy right here. It is an image frame. You're going to click on that. And from the upper left-hand corner, you're going to click and drag and hold and drag all the way down to the lower right-hand corner. Make sure you get the whole thing in there. edge to edge, and you get that big X across the center. That's no problem. Now you're going to right click and you're going to say get image, and you're going to browse to where your image is at. So my file should be up at the very top, and there it is. There's the Soul Survivor one. You can see it right there. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to be bigger than this, and that's fine. You're just going to right click and you're going to choose adjust image to frame. And there's your image. Everything's in there. That's your final product right there. So you're just going to save it as a PDF. Come up here to this PDF icon, click on that. You're going to choose where you want to save it to. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to save it to my YouTube folder. And we're going to name this one 12/28/24 Soul Survivor. Final cover. It's going to be saved as a PDF. Check everything out. It's okay. You don't need to do anything here. Just hit save. Takes just a second to do that. And you're done in here. You're done. I'm going to not save that. But now if I go in here to my folder where I was working on things, we'll do sort by date created. And there is my final cover PDF file right there. I'm going to click on that to open it up. You see it right there in the preview. And when I open it up in the browser, that's what it looks like. Now you'll notice there's just a little bit of stuff off on the right and the left. That's because I was being sloppy and I didn't pay attention. So I didn't quite get it lined up, but that's fine because that's going to be outside the trim area. So I'm not that worried about it, but you want to get it as close as possible. Ideally you want no pink showing up from the border on the background, but there's your cover, guys. The ISBN is going to go right here and you're now ready to upload your finished cover. And that is, that's it. We're done. Keep writing, write every day, even if it's just a word. Thanks, guys.